The war on the European continent, money for Ukraine, and the crisis in the US Congress are three issues that are closely related and on which the future of the entire nation depends. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it a lot. Today in our show, we talk for more about will Biden be able to find a compromise with US lawmakers? How much money will the EU be able to give Ukraine? And how should Kyiv respond to new challenges? Meet Karolina Ashion.
For more than a month, the US Congress has been debating what to do with the money allocation package, which includes aid for Ukraine. Against the background of the election campaign, the Republican Party decided to raise the issue of strengthening the migration policy, a topic where they and the Democrats have different views. Aid for Ukraine has become a hostage to the situation. Will a compromise be found in the capital? And what should Kyiv do when the war continues in the country and cold weather sets in? That's about in today's episode. Responsible states and leaders understand that Russia makes the most of various challenges in the world to distract partners from any assistance to Ukraine. This was stated by the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He emphasized that Kyiv is currently working at all levels with various countries and leaders, in particular with US President Joseph Biden and his administration, with both parties in Congress, with the European Union, to maintain the state's support.
They forget about Ukraine. It's true, it's a challenge for us. We need 3 victories. The first is with Congress. This is a challenge. It's not easy. Not everything depends on us. But Ukraine must do everything that depends on it, and even more, so that there is help. And I believe that it will be done. Second, we need the support of the European Union so that the 50 billion package doesn't go anywhere. Not everyone in the European Union today is ready to support this package. Our job to get everyone to support this package. This is another story. And the third story is an open dialogue about the future of our membership in the EU. This is a motivational step for us.
Ukraine needs more help from NATO and other allies. The situation on the battlefield is difficult, said NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Kyiv should retain the status of the sovereign European state. Therefore, it is in the interest of the alliance to support Ukraine properly, he noted.
Last year, Ukraine won the battles of Kiev, Kharkiv, and Kherson. This year, they continue to inflict heavy losses on Russia. Ukraine has recaptured 50% of the territory that Russia seized. It has prevailed as a sovereign, independent nation. This is a big win for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia is weaker politically, economically, and militarily. Ukraine continues to fight bravely. We continue to support them. This month, Germany and the Netherlands pledged 10 billion euros for Ukraine.
Ukraine is still in the focus of the United States despite the war in Israel, says Ukrainian ambassador to the US, Oksana Markarova. The Ukrainian side is doing everything possible to ensure that Ukraine doesn't disappear from the world agenda. According to the ambassador, every delegation of Kyiv and every speech of Markarova herself is dedicated to this. The ambassador assures that the US Agency for International Development's administrator, Samantha Power, and the Minister of Finance, Janet Yellen, and Antony Blinken are working on helping Kyiv. However, US President Joe Biden's aid package worth almost $106 billion for Ukraine, Israel, and other needs is sitting idle in Congress. It is neither approved nor rejected, but it is subject to new political demands of the Republicans. Whether Ukraine will receive financial support from America next year depends on whether Republicans and the Democrats find a compromise on the issue of US migration policy. The leader of the Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, said that the best way to ensure the support of Ukraine on the part of the Republican Party is for Biden and the Democrats to adopt changes in the border policy to limit the flow of migrants across the border with Mexico. Congress has twice passed spending bills this fall that didn't include aid to Ukraine. President Biden asked to adopt a document supporting Ukraine and Israel in October. This is a total package of $106 billion. Of this, Biden wanted to send $61.4 billion to Ukraine and the rest to Israel and to strengthen the border between the United States and Mexico. It is the strengthening of the control over the influx of refugees from Mexico that the Republicans have been demanding for more than a year. So at first, it seemed that this issue was in the same package with Ukraine, a good plan, they said. So party representatives would support the package faster. Instead, the Republicans proposed to adopt a document on aid to Israel separately and postpone Ukraine and the issue of the border with Mexico for later. They also have their demands on migration policy to strengthening it even more. The Democrats disagree with this and instead state that the strengthening of the migration policy will stop the possibility of assisting some refugees from Ukraine, Afghanistan, and other countries, I quote, whom we should help, not deport. That is how Ukraine found itself hostage in the 30-year dispute between Republicans and Democrats about the border. And now I'm ready to talk to my guest about current issue. So now I'm glad to introduce my guest, Hary Tabach, the captain of the first rank of the U.S. Navy. So it's a pleasure to talk to you,
Thank
Hary.
you. Thank you, Caroline. It's a pleasure to join you in this program.
Thank you. So, and I do hope that we will find a solution and you will help me and my audience to understand better what is going on with the help, with the aid for Ukraine. Okay?
Well, it's very complicated because, but thank you for this opportunity because it started with originally almost a year and a half ago. On the 9th of May, President Biden signed a Lend-Lease agreement, which didn't go any further than that. There was no plan created. There was a lot of, I think, disinformation about it in Ukraine. So Ukrainians never really got that program, which was one out of 4 programs that were introduced, including the presidential drawdown, allocated for it. Then somehow our Pentagon miscalculated over $6 billion in 1 year that was supposed to be that were allocated for Ukraine. It appeared to me that there were like 2 grand babushkas are sitting there in a basement of a Pentagon with an abacus and made the $6 billion mistake. And nobody was responsible for it. And eventually it came now to a situation where many people in the United States said, listen, we've been giving over $100 billion to Ukraine, according to the administration, and said that there was going to be an offensive, that the Ukrainians are going to free Crimea, that there's going to be all these things, that they're going to get airplanes, tanks, and all these things, but yet they didn't get anything, and there's really no advancement. It seems to us as though there is a war of attrition is going on, and if there is a war of attrition, then of course Ukrainians will lose. And when Prigozhin was marching towards Moscow, I believe Mr. Blinken came out and warned the Ukrainians not to conduct any military operations against Russia, particularly on the Russian territory. Let Russia stabilize itself.
Yes, it was very unfair. Yes, I remember it's very well, and it was like shock. So okay, we have Ukraine have to stay. Ukraine have to wait for something, not to destroy. Right. Not to strike.
Well, usually
Russia. That's the same time.
As a military man, I can tell you this is exactly what we wait for. We wait for a while there's something going wrong in an enemy camp, and that's when you strike. This is, I think, obvious, but Ukrainians were prevented from it, as they were in 2014, prevented by the same administration not to defend Crimea and to give it up, and and then, of course, they started to defend Donbass. So now it came to a point where the Republicans took slight power or slightly more members in our lower house of representatives, and they said, okay, well, we can't give any more money to Ukraine unless we have some sort of a plan. We need a plan. Okay, we're going to give more money. What kind of weapons are this money going to get Ukraine? Because just giving money in the packages where there is gender education, building roads, making movies, rebuilding American embassy, all these things are included in it that have nothing to do with defending Ukraine or weaponry, besides just a little bit of artillery. And we want a plan. If we're giving money, then those packages should be spread apart. That first we vote on the package for military aid to Ukraine. Then we vote on other packages that are involved. And Democrats said no. The Senate said no on it because in those packages they were combined. It was help for Ukraine. How much of a military help is not clear. Then I think over $300 million or $500 million were given to the Ukrainian internal forces to fight corruption. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. You're giving a drug dealer gives a drug addict narcotics to stop taking narcotics. That's the way I can compare it to. And then, of course, what happened, they said, okay, let's split those packages so everybody knows who votes for what instead of blaming it. Just because you put a title on it, assistance to Ukraine, but in that package, there's very little that goes to Ukraine, then it's really, fooling people in it. And then if you don't vote for it, they say, okay, well, you don't want to help Ukraine. So this time, now we have Israel on top of everything. So there's got to be aid to Israel. And Democrats want to put aid to Israel, aid to Ukraine, aid to Palestinian Authority, and build the wall, building the wall on our southern borders, all in one package. The Republicans don't want that. Republicans saying, no, let's vote first on Israel. And they voted in the lower house of representatives in our Congress for it, for $14 billion, I believe. Then we'll vote right away. And Speaker of the House said he agrees on whatever, $40 billion for Ukraine to vote, and then we vote on the other things. So we all can see who votes for what and what includes in those packages, not bundling them all up. So that became a showstopper. And of course, we haven't voted on the budget of the United States yet. And now the Congress is in a recession. They're on vacation. So now then we're going to have Christmas holidays, and then they're going to be on vacation, New Year's holidays. So this is all, of course, stopping and preventing. But the idea is to make it short, maybe clear, one side of and it's not all Republicans and it's not all Democrats. I'm generalizing it. It's the White House that's resisting it. But in short, what I think some of us are trying to say, it's not the money, it's not the amount of money, it's what kind of weapons will Ukrainians be able to purchase with this money. If we give them money and say, well, all we can do is purchase, military boots, socks, and sea rations, well, then, yeah, that's military aid too, but that's not enough. We want to know what kind of airplanes, so what those airplanes are going to be armed with, how many tanks. They were talking originally about 31 M1A1 Abrams tanks, and they said 30. Nobody understood why there was 31 tanks. Then Ukrainians paid for it with our money, with this money that was given to us in those packages for Ukraine. A year passed by, and now they're receiving first tanks that were built for them. Well, it turns out to be that those tanks is M1A1 M1 tanks, not A2 tanks. So they're old tanks. They're tanks of my generation that were in a desert storm. So why do we have to build and sell them those tanks when we already paid once for those tanks, and our Nevada desert is full of thousands of those tanks are sitting there? We could have just given it to them. So this is a huge corruption scheme. And now, of course, before the elections, we're going to end up, saying, okay, well, they failed. We gave them everything they wanted. They kept saying everything is enough, everything is great, and at the end, this is the result. So I think that we should maintain the pressure on our Congress, on our elected officials to provide sufficient and serious help. This is Ramstein 15 or 17 already, and there is still no anti-aircraft defenses. No, the skies are not closed over Ukraine. So this winter, Russians again are going to be bombarding Ukrainian heating and electric infrastructure, that people are going to be freezing and the hospitals are going to be freezing. But of course, the attention is drawn away by making sure that Hamas is not being killed so harshly. They don't care that the Ukrainian cities are getting wiped out. They don't care about Ukrainian children somehow, the Red Cross and the rest of those organizations. They worry more about the
So, Hary,
Hamas
let me ask you.
Palestinian children.
Yeah, let me ask you about one very important thing. What do you personally associate with the rhetoric that in the future Europe can take on the main burden of helping Ukraine instead of the United States? Could you just imagine this situation? I think this is the only one country in the world who can take on the burden on herself, and this is the United States.
Well, I don't know. There's different schools of thought of it. Of course, in the United States, many of us are saying, you know what, Ukraine is Europe. Europeans should pay more attention. While Europeans were not paying their share of NATO and building Northern Stream with Russia to make billions and billions of dollars, while there is Europeans right now that has continued to buy and smuggle Russian oil and price oil up, it'll end up as an American problem. We have our own problems right now. So the other school of thought is, listen, we were one of the guarantors of the Budapest Memorandum. Ukrainians gave up their weapons, so we should stick to our word. Either way, Ukraine will need help, whether it will come from Europe or United States. Hopefully it will be both. There will be like a Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe, but also I think to rebuild Ukraine. But also I think it is very, very important not to forget that Russia is a very rich country. It is, at the end of it, it is Russia that caused all this destruction, death, and suffering for many years for Ukrainians to deal with. It is them that should be paying huge reparations to Ukraine, with the European Union and the United States and the entire Western world should apply pressure for the Russians at the end to pay for what they have created. That nightmare for the Ukrainians and for the neighbors, because the neighbors also had to take in refugees and many things. So this is what I hope will happen once Ukraine kick them out of their land.
So, Hary, I know that you often have to comment not only on facts, but also on rumors. I cannot but ask you about some rumors which are treated highly cautiously and at the same time seriously in Ukraine. What do you know about the attempt by Germany and the United States to push Ukraine to sign a peace deal with Putin? Is such a scenario possible, and what are its possible consequences?
Well, I don't think it's a rumor, Caroline. I think it is absolutely true that they're pushing. And this, I think, was the plan right from the beginning. When they were saying that, Ukraine got 3 days before Russia will take over, and it's going to be like this Georgia scenario, it didn't work out. This is going to be almost going into 3 years that Ukraine is able to resist the invasion of this herd. And then it became this land lease. It became, yes, we'll help you. Ramstein 1 will turn the sky and the land upside down to help Ukraine. We'll give Ukraine everything that Ukraine needs, all these promises, but really never delivering on it. Nobody really delivered on any of the promises. Maybe only Great Britain has done it, and of course Poland. But the rest really didn't do that much. So I think it was then the plan changed. I think originally the plan was, you create an advancement area in Crimea and in Donbass, and have done that. and then Hillary Clinton comes to the White House, and it's going to be a Georgian scenario where they're just going to replace the government in Ukraine, that is going to be pro-Russian, but things didn't go right. The different president ended up taking the White House, which lifted all the sanctions and lifted all the embargoes on the lethal weapons for Ukraine, who dropped the oil prices to the point where Russia could not finance themselves, neither could Iran. It was a $35 to $40 a barrel at the time. And so the Russians are set and kept waiting and waiting until, again, friendly governments in Europe and in the United States will come. And the next, again, Obama too came into the White House. The first day they took sanctions off the Northern Stream. They put sanctions on the Keystone pipeline, forbid the development of oil and gas on our fracking gas on our federal grounds, and the oil prices went up to now it's up to $100 a barrel. So that's a lifeline for Russia, for Iran, for Venezuela, for our enemies. So this is when they start gathering the troops. And then when the President Biden says, well, if it's going to be large invasion, then it's not good. But if it's not a large invasion, it's okay. So Russians had a green light, took our embassy out of Ukraine. We never took our embassy out of Soviet Union during World War II, out of Moscow or out of the Soviet Union. But this time, before the war even started, we moved our embassy out, meaning, like, come on in, do whatever you want to. But it didn't work out that way. It didn't work out. They didn't expect that the President Zelensky will remain, would not leave, even though he was offered asylum by President Biden twice. They didn't expect that Ukrainian people take arms, and they had lethal weapons now that were given to them. They didn't expect that Russians will not be able to advance as the way they wanted it to. So things went wrong. So now they said, okay, it's going to have to be a war by attrition. The Russians have to take what they have invaded so far. So now they're pressuring Ukraine to say, okay, well, how long can you do it? You've been doing it for a year, no progress. We've given you everything we could, or you wanted it, and yet there is no advancement. So your generals are not very good. Your corruption is so high. Our elections are coming up. So go ahead, sit down at the negotiating table and bring peace. They have done this many, many times, and Israel has fallen for it for decades. And now Israel is resisting it, saying, no, we're not going to negotiate. We're going to end this job. And I think that although it is a different war there than in Ukraine, Ukrainians are fighting an army with airplanes and missiles and tanks. So we should pressure them and say, no, Ukraine should not do that. It's not going to stop the war. It's going to stop the war for a short period of time while our elections are completed. After our elections are done, Russians will regroup, will rebuild their military to better advance, and go ahead and smash Ukraine. So I think this is not a rumor. I think this is the plan that they've had all along, to give Ukraine to Russia.
So,
unfortunately.
yeah, Hary, unfortunately, I don't have any time to continue our interesting conversation, but I do hope that we will have another opportunity to discuss all this, not only this topic. Yes.
I think we should do more. I think we should do more and more in English, so the English-speaking world will hear us, that Ukraine is there, Ukraine is fighting, and Ukraine is standing, and not to give in to just one camp of world politics to sacrifice Ukraine for their political thirst.
Yeah, indeed. So, Hary, thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation. Have a good day. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
And now I'm ready to continue our show. In the letter, he recalled Zelensky's words from his appeal to the Senate in September that if Ukraine doesn't receive help, it will lose the war. As Schumer noted, nothing would make autocrats like Putin or Xi Jinping happier than the United States doubting the support of the Ukrainian people. To inform senators about the situation in Ukraine, a secret briefing for all senators will be held in the coming days. The chairman of the Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives of the United States Congress, Republican Mike Turner, said that it would be difficult to pass new American aid to Ukraine and Israel by the end of the year.
I think it'd be very difficult to get it done by the end of the year. And the impediment currently is the White House policy on the southern border. The White House in this package, including it as a national security package, recognizing that the southern border is a threat, put in funding, but it's going to need policy changes. Congress is going to require that there be laws changed to make certain that the border returns to its prior state, perhaps remain in Mexico, other types of provisions that would secure the southern border.
Let's discuss all this with my guest. I'm glad to introduce my guest, Kateryna Odarchenko, political scientist. So, pleasure to have you with us, Kateryna.
Thank you for inviting me. Good to see you again.
Yeah,
Yes.
Good to see you again, yeah. And I hope you will help me and our audience understand better what is happening around the issue of American aid to Ukraine, okay?
We'll try.
Yeah. So my first question, the Republicans announced to the White House a list of demands they would support to assist Kyiv. Is this a matter of political bargaining, or are they not sufficiently informed about how important it is to help Ukraine now?
Look, it's two issues. So we must understand that American budget process is the same budget process as in every country. So it's always make place for people who want to have additional money for their own districts. Some people want to have more money for their, work or support or subsidies of, for example, manufacturing of their districts or for some separate economic sectors. So part of politicians try to use Ukrainian question and question of any international aid to have more benefits in their own questions. So it's the same issue as in every country. Second issue that some politicians said that let's separate Ukrainian aid and Israeli aid, which not very good solution for Ukraine, but still they want to vote all points separately. And of course, Democrats try to give this vote in package, because one more time, all supplemental aid, it's also not one bill, it's separate bills. So it's hard discussion, and we know that in United States they also have some appropriation committees, so it's committee who try to, stabilize and count all these positions and make it happen. But it will be tough months because nobody don't want to move United States to shut down. And all political parties tried also to get the political benefits on this discussion. So, for example, a question of on American elections from Republicans that we will cut off all spending, that no more spending, we must cut off spending. So one more time, I'm talking about this as political message, which they use. And Democrats, of course, said, no, more question of foreign affairs, that let's stop Putin now, because otherwise we will see how China will go to Taiwan and so on and so forth. And also, base of Republicans understand this aid in the wrong way. So some people don't understand that this money not directly go to Ukraine as a money, as a bags of money. Most of this money originally go to American economy, for example, to some production in defense sector, to contractors in the United States. So originally, it's also work and workplaces and budget for Americans. So, and I see on last hearings in Senate Democrats that they try not to change this perception. Some people try not to change this perception, but, speculate on this perception of their base, of their basic voter, to, get more political benefits, because one more time, less than 1 year, they will have elections of president. And obviously, Ukrainian question became political question of the next election campaign, of this election campaign.
Yes. It's understandable when you are just explained that sometimes we can hear that the support and aid to Ukraine, it's like united with the aid to Israel and one issue. But how would you explain why aid to Ukraine is linked to an internal issue, the situation on the border with Mexico? It's very strange. It sounds very strange.
It's one more time political messages. You know how create political messages. So politicians have focus groups. It's some type of sociological research. And people said that, what is our problem? Our problem is inflation. Our problem is high interest rates for mortgage, like for buy houses. And it's migration problem. And politicians get this, position from society and use these messages to, have feedback from voters. One more time, it's happened in every not authoritarian countries the same. So that's why they have message that why we put money for somewhere else and which you don't understand, like it's another continent, and not use this money for domestic issues. And the most vulnerable people, also people who, for example, previously work on in mining, for example, and they lose their jobs because it's no more mining, coal mining, for example, here in Pennsylvania, where I'm located. So they try to find why these problems exist, and a simple message that let's take this money to solve domestic problems. It's message which understandable for these voters. One more time, I think it's not enough educational work, because one more time, mostly of this aid money, they not go directly to Ukraine as the money. They go to United States economy originally, which help Ukraine, for example, with supplies of some armors.
Yes. And what is the essence, if we are talking about domestic issue, migration policy, what is the essence of different visions of this problem migration policy between Democrats and Republicans?
Look, it's a question which actual for more than 20 years. So it's not a new question. And as you see, nowadays with more polarization between Republicans and Democrats, and more polarized also candidates for president, so it became not central right and central left. It became more right and more left, So that's why this discussion became, more hot discussion. But it's not new issue. And last 20 years in every election, it's an issue what to do with illegal migration. And as you see, also Republicans connect issue with migration with issue of crime, which not also direct correlated. But they said that, if it's illegal migration, it's obviously crime. And then they connect drug abusing and some addictions also with issue of migration, which not directly true, obviously, but it's work as political message. And so now it's this solution slowly going. And Mallorca, who in Biden administration work on this issue, he very clearly told how they do reform on asylum process, how they give additional support for border control, additional funding for immigration service. So this originally worked, but America is a huge country, and obviously reforms can be done by 1 month. So it's political question, and it's, for basic voter, it's very easy. So why you must support something which you don't understand? Support some which you understand. You want to fight crime? Vote for us, we will fight the crime. But Putin do more crime worldwide, and it's not only about Ukraine. He do the same with Hamas in Israel because, like, he supports Hamas. Yes, he worked with Iran, who also support terrorist group here. Support dictators in Africa. So it's pretty international issue, you know. And one more time, we as all Ukrainians and as media also need to work with base. So with American voters who must, understand this issue and then support politicians, who show that it's not question of Ukrainians, it's question of Americans as leadership nation, in democracy building.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Kateryna, for this conversation, very insightful. And have a good one. Nice to talk to you.
Watch this.
If United States aid decreases and both the White House and Kyiv hope this will not happen, then Europe has to provide insurance. The European Union promises to help Kyiv more. At the same time, a striking feature of European support is that it is calculated for several years ahead and is already embedded in multi-year budget plans in the European Union and individual countries. The European Union itself will provide 50 billion euros until 2027 inclusive. Denmark, Great Britain, Switzerland, Sweden, Portugal and Lithuania also announced multi-year programs. The new multi-year programs significantly changed the rating of Ukraine's largest European donors. Let's take not the absolute numbers, but the aid ratio given to the country's GDP. Norway has now become the leader in supporting Ukraine. Russia's northern neighbor intends to provide the country which is fighting against Russian aggression 1.7% of its gross domestic product. Next are the Baltic states, particularly alarmed by the Russian threat: Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. Denmark rose for fifth place, which allocates almost 3 billion euros, or 1.1% of GDP, through the national support funds for Ukraine. Most of these funds will go to military support provided in this year and the next 2024. The top 10 includes Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, Germany, and Finland. Of these 5 countries, only Germany has adopted a multi-year program. The other day, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, wrote a letter to President Zelensky and stated that the European Commission is allocated 50 million euros to Ukraine for infrastructure reconstruction. Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, also expressed support for Ukraine.
L'Italia è e sarà al vostro fianco finché sarà necessario, perché il futuro dell'Ucraina è un futuro di pace, è un futuro di libertà, è un futuro europeo. Il popolo ucraino può contare sull'Italia. Ci siamo sempre stati, ci saremo sempre.
However, among the European countries, there are opponents of supporting Ukraine. The result of the parliamentary election held in Slovakia 30th of May leads to the fact that this country will reduce or even completely stop providing military and other aid to Ukraine. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban threatened to disrupt the December summit of European Union leaders. Aid to Kyiv will be discussed at this event. The meeting participants will also raise issues regarding the start of negotiations of Ukraine's accession to the European Union. Budapest recently announced that it intends to hold strategic discussions with the European financial community to support Ukraine. We will discuss the role of Orban and European Union's international policy later with the guests, and for now we will discuss guests from overseas.
In the months ahead, right up to the European elections, we face serious political struggles. Budget debates in Brussels, and our task will be to correct the mistaken promise to start negotiations with Ukraine. Since Ukraine is now light years away from the European Union,
Watch this.
United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken went to Brussels to talk about Ukraine. There was a meeting of the Ukraine-NATO Council in Brussels at the level of foreign ministers. The United States Secretary of State once again confirmed Ukraine's unwavering support in the fight against Russian aggression.
We will be strongly reaffirming our support for Ukraine as it continues to face Russia's war of aggression. We will be looking to the summit next year in Washington to celebrate the 75th anniversary of NATO, but not just celebrate that anniversary, continue to carry the alliance forward, including with the commitments that its members are making to our collective defense. We have a lot of work that we'll be doing, as you said, as well, on the Western Balkans, with our partners for NATO from around the world, including the Asia Pacific. And of course, we will be talking about the crisis in Gaza and the broader Middle East. Like you, Jens, I am very pleased to see hostages returning home, coming back to be with their loved ones. And we're determined to continue that for as long as possible, to bring as many people home as we possibly can. And that continues.
NATO will not stop supporting Ukraine. This is clear signal from Russia, said the Secretary General of the Alliance, Jens Stoltenberg. He emphasized that Europe is increasing its support. So Germany promised to allocate 8 billion euros next year, and the Netherlands more than 2 billion euros. In addition, Romania opened an F-16 training center for Ukrainian pilots.
It's our obligation to ensure that we provide Ukraine with the weapons they need, because it will be a tragedy for Ukrainians if President Putin wins, but it will also be dangerous for us, because then the message to all authoritarian leaders, not only in Moscow but also in Beijing, is that when they violate international law, when they invade another country, when they use force, they get what they want. So this is about the whole idea of a rules-based international order where territorial borders are respected. And therefore, NATO allies have provided unprecedented level of military support. This has really had an impact, made a difference on the battlefield, because the Ukrainians have been able to liberate around 50% of the territory that was occupied after a full-scale invasion. The challenge now is that we need to sustain this support.
And now I'd like to discuss all this with my guest. I'm glad to introduce my guest, who is already in contact with our studio, Professor of International Law from Estonia, Eugeny Cibulenko. Good afternoon.
Good evening. Glory to Ukraine.
Hello. So, and first of all, I'd like to thank your country for its effort to help Ukraine. It means a lot. So, and further, I propose to discuss the issue of the European Union's participation in helping Ukraine in more detail, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with this issue. What will the approval of the European Union program for financing Ukraine depend on in the coming years? What do you think?
Yeah, of course, main obstacle is position of certain countries. First of all, of Hungary. Maybe it will be Slovakia also. And it's indeed a big problem because, as we know, all decisions in European Union are taken by consensus. Respectively, any country can veto any decision. And it was happened already several times with Mr. Orban. And respectively, European Union need to find certain solutions. Of course, we should always keep in mind that European Union is not simply organizations, first of all, member states. And of course, member states can provide assistance on a bilateral basis, and it will not be related to any positions of any specific country, so it will depend only on the country which provides the assistance. And actually here it's very important to show the example, and yes, as you mentioned, Estonia indeed was one of the leaders of the assistance to Ukraine, both military and in general. And Estonia actually on the first place by the military assistance. If to calculate by the state GDP, it's more than 1%, or it's more than 1/3 of military budget of the country. So it's absolute record in that sense. And actually, Estonia and Latvia, Lithuania was also two first countries who provided Ukraine lethal weapons. It was also certain breakthrough because all other countries were pretty reluctant to do that. And actually, it's happened even during the first stage of the war after the 2014, because we should also remember that in 2022 only new phase, which was full-scale invasion started, but the war itself started with occupation of Crimea and invasion on eastern Ukraine in 2014. So Estonia and Lithuania provided lethal weapons already before the full-scale invasion. So that's why the role of the countries within European Union is also very important, and we should not undervalue it. But if to talk about more general issues, of course, the problem of decision-making in European Union, it's a topical issue which is discussed already for many years, and there are different proposals that in specific areas, in particular in foreign relations, probably a consensus principle should not be used anymore, but probably qualified majority should be used or something like that. But of course, to change the procedure, it will also take time, and it also will be not easy to agree among all member states. That's why it will take time, and we could not expect any solutions in nearest future as to that.
Yeah, so Mr. Cibulenko, you've already mentioned that one of the biggest problems is the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. He's not alone among the leaders of the European Union countries in his efforts to prevent the allocation of aid to Ukraine. Not alone, but very consistent from the very beginning of the Russians' full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So how does the European Union assess the weight of his words? Is it a matter of bargaining?
In certain sense, yes, I believe it's bargaining because Hungary had a lot of different issues with European Union because it violates a lot of democratic principles. And as we know, the assistance of European Union to Hungary was frozen, but actually a few days ago it was finally unfrozen. Yeah, probably it's certain element of bargaining, but not only. I actually truly believe that Mr. Orban indeed has certain connections with Russia, and clearly Russia will reinforce itself, and in a few years it will start again. And now NATO countries also could be under attack. But we should clearly understand that Russia is not the only one totalitarian regime on our planet, and all authoritarian totalitarian regimes will very closely watch what will be the end of Russo-Ukrainian war. And if Russia will not be defeated, it will be green signal to do the same. And I'm pretty sure that next will be Taiwan, which will be attacked by Communist China. And as we all know, Taiwan produces up to 90% of all world semiconductors, microchips. And respectively, if such attack will not lead to Third World War, which is really possible, it will lead at least for the collapse of world economy, which all developed countries will feel, because modern economy without semiconductors and microchips is simply impossible. We've seen it during COVID crisis. Then there were some problems with logistic, not even production, but simply logistic of these microchips, and some major producers of cars, for example, stopped their lines because it was impossible to produce cars without microchip, etc. But if Taiwan will be under attack, it will be a full collapse of economy. And I think that politicians in Western countries started finally understand that. And it was even openly articulated that if Russia will not be defeated, it will be a clear example for all destructive forces. And actually, we can clearly see that these evil acts already clearly exist, because there is a clear connection between Russia, Iran, Hamas, Northern Korea. They support each other. They organize destabilization around the globe. So clearly Hamas could not attack Israel by itself. It was always supported by Iran and by Russia as well, even if through Iran. But if we will look deeper to the history, we'll see that a lot of Palestinian terrorists were supported and trained by Soviet Union, and even created by Soviet Union, some organizations, and respectively. This alliance of the Rouge countries, it's unfortunately sad reality, and they try to attack ruled by law democratic states and actually spread chaos across the globe, unfortunately. So it should be clearly addressed and stopped, and if it will not be done, our future will be very sad.
So thank you very
Absolutely.
much, Professor, for time and answering my questions.
Watch this.
After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the world has realized Russia's aggressive ambitions and the need to protect sovereignty. Europe's determination to defend itself is stronger than ever. Ukraine is a symbol of the consequences of underestimating such an aggressor. The Czech Republic, a vital NATO member, is actively preparing for similar challenges. NATO fighters exchange experiences with Ukrainian forces, and the Czech Republic, one of the first to provide support to Ukraine, actively improves its defense and learns from Ukrainian soldiers at its NATO bases.
In a world where the fate of an entire continent teeters on the brink of uncertainty, Ukraine emerges as the unassuming guardian of Europe's destiny. The future of the European continent now hangs in the balance, swaying on the outcome of a struggle so significant it transcends the borders. The enemy, Russia, a terrorist nation that has swept into Ukrainian territory. Leaving destruction and despair in its wake. But these soldiers are the beacon of hope, the warriors that refuse to bow to the darkness. As Ukrainian soldiers stand strong in the face of an aggressive adversary, Europe witnesses a defining moment. It is a moment where the unthinkable becomes the imperative, where the impossible transforms into the necessary.
I think Ukrainian military is doing a great job. They really fighting hard. We admire their heroism and what they do. This situation, it is very hard. It's not like action movie. It takes months, it takes time, and it is really tough. And also, I believe that it's not only about how much ground you liberate. It's also about what's going to be your shape after you finish, because what we see on the Russian side is we see the preparations for the long-term conflict.
Russia's terroristic government, driven by its aggressive ambitions, seems to prioritize its geopolitical goals over the welfare of its own people. Ukraine serves as a vital shield against Russia's aggressive ambitions, and countries like Czech Republic understand it well.
It wasn't so clearly articulated before. Now it's recognized widely, it's politically accepted, and we understand and we say it aloud and write it in our strategy that Russia is a direct threat to us, and we need to prepare for that threat. So that's also one of the lessons.
In the hallowed halls of memory, the Czech Republic stands as a witness to history's harsh lessons. A nation that knows the face of an aggressor all too well, for they remember who the Russians are.
I am a person who lived more than 16 years under totalitarian conditions and knows what it means. Ukraine, undoubtedly, has the right to freely decide where it wants to belong, and if it wants to be on the side of the West, then everyone should do everything to ensure that no one interferes with this. So, personally for me, it means that the Czech Republic belongs to those civilized countries, and due to our historical experience, we have a moral duty to help Ukraine. Because in Ukraine, they are not only fighting for Ukraine, they are fighting for all of us, including the Czech Republic.
The Russian Federation, it's an aggressor country that Europe must confront. It's not just a regional concern, it's a challenge that reaches far beyond borders. It's a stark reminder that the civilized world must unite to restrain an adversary. The Minister of Defense of the Czech Republic, Jana Černochová, consistently reminds the world of this, for she knows firsthand who the Russian barbarians are.
In addition to what we can provide to Ukraine, Ukrainians, in turn, provide us with the necessary information from the battlefield so that we can adapt some of our strategic thinking and military plans.
On this training ground, a crucial message is being sent, a united front against a common enemy. As the soldiers from Ukraine and the Czech Republic train together, the world learns from Ukraine how to defend its homeland.
As this is already the 5th visit, and we have experience in such training. Fighters with frontline experience always come. They will pass on their experiences to us. They will share their life after death, talk, help, and they will also be Soviet raiders. And some specific target elements are taken care of in the Czech army. Czech instructors are professional military personnel from mechanized battalions. They are trained by clan leaders and commanders of the Czech Defense Forces. In a mutually beneficial arrangement, clan leaders instruct soldiers during their service. Officers with about 10 years of service, these are clan commanders, captains, commander.
Therefore, the training of the Ukrainian military takes place here, which in turn brings their experience of real war to the NATO fighters. Precision is their creed, and they are the shadows that strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. Sniper training, where patience is a weapon and precision is a creed. The art of precision unfolds on the sniper range. Ukrainian snipers, guided by their NATO comrades, sharpen their marksmanship. Every breath, every heartbeat is a part of the symphony of that one perfect shot. The enemy won't see us coming, but they will feel our presence. Medical care becomes a crucial skill in the field. Ukrainian soldiers are trained to become not only warriors but also lifesavers. When every second counts, their hands become the instrument of salvation. They are the difference between life and loss.
Golden hour means that within an hour, a wounded soldier needs to be in a hospital. It's best for them because time is life, and we are training them to quickly do the primary surgery or something like that, primary assessment, and then quickly transport them somewhere where they can help them.
This training ground isn't just about military preparedness. It's a beacon of hope, a powerful message to the world.
It's important to say that 2 points. First of all, that we have this sad history that in 1968 the Russians came, the Soviet occupation, so we know what is when the brother from East is coming, it's first, and secondly that we are journalists and documentarists, so we know that it's necessary from our witnesses that it's necessary to say no to the devil.
Martin, representing the Czech non-profit organization Postbellum, spearheaded the Find Rising campaign for Ukraine. It's truly remarkable how they can unmistakably distinguish the true adversary for all, Russia. This is why they stand alongside Ukraine, determined to overcome the adversary together, for they are learning from a harrowing example.
That we clearly identify Russia. If the Ukrainians didn't resist, if we didn't support it, if we don't stop the Russia in this behavior, that would be very bad news for countries like us, because the result of this conflict will shape the behavior in international relations for the long time, and we don't want to have world order based on who is stronger can do whatever they want, to weakers, and we have this historical experience.
Ukraine, the shield of Europe, stands resolute in the face of adversity, with the world at her side. This is a message to the world. We stand united against the common enemy, and we'll fight to preserve our shared values of freedom. These drills are not just about tactics, They signify the unbreakable bond between nations that stand against aggression and tyranny, nations that refuse to let their values be trampled upon. Watch this.
Despite all the turbulence and crisis, Ukrainian partners promised to be with Kyiv until the end, until victory, because Ukraine defends its land from the Russian invaders, not only for its own sake, but also to confirm Western values. Take care. See you soon.